Monte Panesar has been spending a bit of time in the nets. During play yesterday, he was in the nets. So on the floor, going into the nets with him, having some throwdowns, having some general batting practice. Works very hard at his game, Monte Panesar. Specialist position is just a spinner, but he's trying everything: batting, fielding.
Still on one. It's 3:51 for 9.
England should also be quite happy.
.55 for 2 this morning in 17 overs. So England, I would say, having the better of it. Frustrations maybe showing. Maybe not. Maybe it's just Dwayne Bravo having a bit of slightly more excitable fun. He was the man who should have had that final wicket. Saw the easiest of chances go down. Better shot this time. He's hit that very hard. So the practice he's getting at the bouncer is paying off. He's gone from looping it up in the air for a chance to looping it over the keeper's head to smashing it away in front of square all the way to that deep mid-wicket boundary.
Well, if you do try one shot often enough, at some point you're going to get it right. That is why it's no point in bowling so many short balls to anyone. If you don't get them out early with it, they will certainly get better with the shot. It should be a surprise delivery.
Well, it's all helping the cause, this, as far as England are concerned, but it'll be worrying West Indies, no doubt about that. West Indies would have had ambitions this morning to take the 3 wickets they needed as quickly as possible, and this counts as an untoward delay. Approaching the 90-minute mark this morning. 3:56 now the score. Darren Ganga has to take this final wicket, or have his side take this final wicket, then think about batting, of course, as well. Big swing from Monty. But that's all.
I think that's delivery still, though, shows what is capable out there, what the bowlers have going for them. Ball is still swinging. Swing has nothing to do with the pitch, of course, but you can see after the ball passes the batsman, it's still going. You can still see that there's enough there in the atmosphere to help that ball to swing. Started wide, but have a look at that. It just keeps going.
He's hit that hard. Managed to reach that one. He's clobbered it. Absolutely clobbered it through the offside.
Well, if you give anyone this much room and they are looking for runs, they'll certainly throw a bat at ball. Throw the kitchen sink at it if they have a chance. Just too wide. Just too wide. Just showing the benefit of all the hard work that he has done, Monte Panesar.
Even Monty's trying the pull now. There's no one at mid-on. No one in position to take the miscue. 10 from the over. 3:61 for 9. Well, the captain might have a few things to say here. All very well trying the bouncer, and to be fair to Dwayne Bravo, the bouncer has nearly brought the wicket that would wrap up the innings on a couple of occasions there. But every ball counts, and the wide ones haven't helped. So Sidebottom's moved on to 15, Panesar on to 6. Last wicket partnerships now on to 23. Still watching for now then. Won't be long before Alan Donald on the left there watches his new charges with the ball in their hands. Close to the outside edge. A little bit of movement there from Colin Moore, but not quite close enough. Good shot. Slightly bottom bit of the bat. Two more.
Last wicket partnership like this is just so good for England and so bad for the West Indies. Instead of going in with their tails up, West Indies just might find themselves spending a bit more time out there than necessary.
In full flow now, Monty Panesar. Just rocking onto the back foot. West Indies appear to have no answers to this last wicket partnership. Panesar and Sidebottom now put on 29. It's now a new record too. The previous best for England against the West Indies for the last wicket at Old Trafford was Messrs Truman and Statham. In 1963 that record was set.
Not just that they have put on 29 runs together, they have put those 29 runs together out of just 23 deliveries, 24 deliveries now. Perhaps it's time for the short one to be brought back. That short slingy fellow, Phillip Edwards. Bit of pace, straight full stumps backwards.
That might have gone a long way. They can look for the second here. Panesar waking up that possibility just a little slowly, but getting there nonetheless. It's another productive over, another 8 runs. It's 369 for 9. Partnership in the middle worth 31 now. There's a new partnership in the commentary box though. It's David Lloyd with Michael Atherton.
Thanks, David. Darren Ganger's had enough of seeing Monty Panesar swipe it all around, so he's recalled his fastest bowler, Fidel Edwards. No doubt with the odd instruction to shake Panesar in particular up. He'll have a chance at Ryan Sidebottom first of all. his whites on for a fair while, Michael Vaughan. Might not have expected this partnership to flourish as it has. 32 it's worth now. Past the previous record set by Truman and Statham. 10th wicket partnership on this ground against the West Indies. That'll do. Brings it to an end. The change in bowling has worked. Fidel Edwards back to clean up the last man, which he does, sending that leg stump flat.
Needed the fast man to come back. He's finished with 3 wickets, Fidel Edwards. He's had an influence for the West Indies. He's gone for 94, but he's got extreme pace. Good effort from these two this morning. Sidebottom and Panesar. Just clatters into the leg stump off his pads. Full-length delivery. Seen an end to England's innings. 370.
Panesar remains unbeaten. Goes back to warm applause. England 370 all out, which I think they'll be reasonably happy with in the circumstances and under the conditions. They won't maybe be happy that nobody went on to 3 figures, but Ian Bell got close, just 3 short of 100, and there were contributions, decent contributions from Cook, Vaughan and Pryor.
West Indies bowling figures. Taylor with 20 overs, 2 for 67. Fidel Edwards, 20 overs, 3 for 94. Pacey. Corey Collymore steady, 25 overs, 5 maidens, 3 for 60, and a wicket each for Bravo and Sammy.
Okay, as the West Indies head to the pavilion, it's time for us to take a very short break. When we come back, we'll show you the wickets that have fallen. Back to Old Trafford, where England 370 all out in their first innings. Not a bad total on a pitch that's offering plenty of pace and bounce. Show you those wickets that have fallen in this innings. First man to go was Andrew Strauss.
Can't get a run. Full length ball, he's going to hit leg stump. Disappointment. Just anxiety. A class batsman just can't get a run.
Michael Vaughan was going well until he played a loose drive at a ball that just nipped back.
Corey Collymore, the bowler. This is a good delivery. It nips back and beats the drive. Hits the top of off stump.
Kevin Peterson undone by a bit of extra pace and bounce in this Old Trafford pitch.
Says he doesn't like it here, Kevin Peterson. Averages 14 in his career. Looking to play that big shot into the leg side. Finds the fielder.
Alistair Cook was going well, got to 60 and got stuck. Good bit of pressure bowling from the West Indies paid dividends.
Well, he said he clossed it to backward point. What he means is he didn't get on top of the ball. It's a top edge. Good catch in the end.
Paul Collingwood was undone by a good bit of bowling from Jerome Taylor.
Yeah, it was a scratchy innings from Paul Collingwood. Going on to middle and leg. Full length again.
Matt Pryor played well until he too was undone by a short ball, which he managed to pick out the man at deep square leg.
Well, it's been a pacey pitch, is this? Quick bowlers have banged the ball in, and Pryor just doesn't get on top of the ball. It's a high bouncer.
Liam Plunkett got a jacket. It would have been too good for many better players than Liam Plunkett.
How do you play this? Swinging now, 90 miles an hour.
Steve Harmison was given a real working over by Fidel Edwards, and finally, one bouncer too many.
And it's a good bouncer as well. Just about clips the left glove. Easy catch for the keeper.
Ian Bell 3 short of a century, what would have been an excellent century until he got a beauty from Corey Collymore.
Well, a grafting innings, immaculate seam position from Collymore. Look at the bounce, look at the pace again. This pitch is juicy.
Ryan Sidebottom, the last man to go. Fast in-swinging delivery from Fidel Edwards, which ricocheted off the pad.
Well, they had fun at the end, both Panesar and Sidebottom. That's the end of the innings.
Bowling figures for the West Indies: Jerome Taylor 2 for 67, Fidel Edwards 3 for 94, and the excellent Corey Collymore 3 for 60, with a wicket apiece for Dwayne Bravo and Darren Sammy, his first Test wicket. Now, in this interval, we've been watching Steve Harmison and Liam Plunkett bowling out on the middle under the watchful eyes of both Andy Flower and Alan Donald, the new bowling coach. It's quite odd to me that the bowlers would come out in a 10-minute interval, Bumble, when presumably they've done all their preparation before the start of play.
I think it's odd to come out with the coaches. I don't see anything wrong with just coming out, and we see Ryan Sidebottom now and Monty Panesar just coming out, getting loose, just going through some looseness. It's quite odd that coaches are out there with them, and I'm sure that it will not be technical from Donald. It will not be anything technical from Alan Donald. He may be there just to whiz the ball back, as we're seeing. But there's been another interesting thing, that the fourth umpire, Rob Bailey, has been out and told them to move off the square itself. And you can see that where they're bowling now is off the main square. They're onto just a green strip. What they did do, England bowlers, was practice on the square itself. Now, they're not allowed to do that. And Rob Bailey has come out with a message from the umpires. You can see the strip there on left of screen. England started to practice on there. They're not allowed to do that, and so they've had to move on to the outfield. I'll be interested to see if either Harmison or Plunkett are actually opening the bowling, because I need to look at the rules. I need to look at the laws of the game. I have in my memory from umpiring days that you cannot practice on the square itself during the game. And if you do, you're not allowed to open the bowling. We'll see.
Who's going to open it? Monty Panesar?
Collingwood and Sidebottom would be allowed to, because they weren't the two who were on that main square. I'm really interested from an umpiring viewpoint. I'm going back years, and that's how it used to be.
Smacks of a little bit of lack of common sense to me, but we're opening the law book as we speak there, and law 17, which says practice on the field. There should be no bowling or batting practice on any other part of the square on any day of the match except before the start of play or after the close of play on that day. If a player contravenes the above law, he shall not be allowed to bowl, and until either at least 1 hour later than the contravention, or until there has been at least 30 minutes of playing time since the contravention, whichever is sooner. So technically, according to the laws, David Lloyd is absolutely spot on, and neither Liam Plunkett nor Stephen Harmison ought to be allowed to bowl, but I hope common sense prevails.
You know what they say, laws are laws, and the law is there. The law is not immovable. I can't wait for this. Sidebottom's fine. I think Sidebottom will open the bowling. He did do at Headingley, so he wasn't out there with the other two. The two who were on the square, on the strip, were Steve Harmison and Liam Plunkett. Will be Ryan Sidebottom with this new ball from the Brian Statham end.
Ryan Sidebottom, an excellent return to Test cricket at Headingley, but hasn't got a particularly good record at Old Trafford. Played 8 matches here in total and has only taken 1 wicket, and that's probably because Old Trafford traditionally has just not been a place to help the swing bowlers. But the Duke balls this year have been swinging more than normal. The Lancashire bowlers, Glenn Chappell, has been saying that he's been bowling genuine swing here this year. So there's hope for Ryan Sidebottom that he might find some swing that he found at Headingley. West Indies, well, they'll be buoyed by the fact that they knocked England over. They haven't looked like doing that in the series so far, and now what they need is a good response. Chris Gayle, they really need him to step forward today as a senior player, top of the order, and set a good tone, partnered by captain Darren Ganga. And they'll have Ryan Sidebottom to face First up, with 3 slips a gully and a catcher at short mid-wicket. And there is just a little bit of swing there for Sidebottom to start with.
Well, I've watched him in practice for the last 2 mornings, and he genuinely has swung the ball. It's one thing that the management always look at on the morning of the game: is the ball going to swing? He's a much better bowler than he was 6 years ago when he first played for England, when he just angled the ball across towards slips against a right-handed batsman. He's learnt his trade in county cricket. He's a good stock, stays fit.
So you're saying, Bumble, that Steve Harmison should not be allowed to bowl this second over by the laws of the game?
By the laws of the game, in my view, it can't be Harmison and it can't be Plunkett. I can't wait to see how they deal with this, because the 4th umpire came out and told them to stop, but they'd already done it.
Well, it's Harmison who's marked out his run. It's Harmison who's getting loose at mid-off. Bit of indecision from Gale. No great conviction about the stroke.
You know what the laws are in the game, and they're in black and white, but regulations sometimes override certain aspects of that. But, well, I can't wait. 4th umpire Strode out there, England practicing. They should know that, to be honest. The England bowlers would know that. You're bound to know that you cannot practice on the square once the game has started.
Chris Gale is off the mark.
Well, this was during the interval. All will be revealed. Steve Harmison is actually practicing on the square. Michael Atherton read out an excerpt of one of the laws of the game. Here's Rob Bailey, the 4th umpire, just telling him you can't do that.
It's gone fine. Whether it came off the pad or... No, runs given by Billy Bowden. It wasn't that far wide of Matt Pryor.
Well, there is swing, and there's decent pace also from Sidebottom. We think about Ryan Sidebottom as low 80s, if that. He's up to 85, 86 miles an hour in this first over.
End of the first over, 6 without loss.
It's Steve Harmison from the Stretford end. Go on, read that out again, Michael. What's the law?
Law 17, practice on the field. There shall no bowling or batting practice on any other part of the square on any day of the match except before the start of play or after the close of play. If a player contravenes the above, he shall not be allowed to bowl until either at least 1 hour later than the contravention or until there has been at least 30 minutes of playing time since the contravention. That's the law. But it appears that it's going to be Steve Harmison who will be allowed to bowl this second over in contravention of Law 17. Starts with a wide, not a kind of Brisbane wide, just an Old Trafford wide.
I noticed a couple of things in the press from West Indies batsmen. We see that this is a quick pitch, and we recognise the threat of Harmison.
Now that's a bigger wide. I can recall even during that match against Pakistan here last year when Steve Harmison took all those wickets, 11 I think in the match. He bowled a wide that went to second slip in that game. That's better. That's as close as he's been to the batsman so far. A sense that everybody's a bit tense whenever England start bowling. Both Harmison and Plunkett have had radar problems coming out in the 10-minute interval between innings with a couple of coaches watching. To my mind, just increases the tension. Don't look relaxed, don't look at ease with themselves. It's untidy from England. It's an untidy start, this.
4 more byes. Just easy runs for the West Indies. They're no threat so far. Yeah, there is a tension, isn't there, when England come out to bowl and you see the pitch and you would say that this is suited to Steve Harmison if he gets his radar right. We talked about the influence now of Alan Donald. Alan Donald, I can tell you, would say to them, relax, just relax. Don't get too technical.
Another wide signal by Aleem Dar, and this is not good. It just get the sense that Steve Harmison is under pressure. And that pressure just getting the better of him at the moment. He needs to relax.
It's the sort of thing that you'd almost say to a bowler in practice, get through your action, just get through, don't put it there. It almost seems to me that he's placing it down the leg side. Finish it off.
Better and out. Just what Steve Harmison needed. Finally gets one straight, and it's too good for Darren Ganga.
Well, you can almost relax now. Have a drink if you like. He gets one dead straight, Steve Harmison. Look at the relief. I can hear behind me great fast bowlers. Michael Holding saying, relax, relax. He gets it straight. They know that Steve Harmison, if he's right, will be a handful on this pitch. Oh, absolutely plumb. He's happy now. Radar all over the place and then dead straight. Early strike for England and Harmison. Ganga has gone for 5, 17 for 1.
17 for 1, the West Indies. Devon Smith at number 3. We've had a 7-ball over so far from Steve Harmison with 3 wides, but a wicket. And still 2 balls to go. That'll be another wide. Will it? Close to being a wide, surely.
It's been one deadly straight. Ganga moves across and in line. The ball just nips back, and he does finish his action there. You can see his body position. Middle stump is the view of Hawkeye. It looked plumb.
It's a beauty. Devon Smith looking to play through the onside. It Just went past the off stump. 2 overs gone, 17 for 1. An interesting first over from Steve Harmison. Jimmy, what have you got for us?
Well, you've already shown us the little bit of work that they did in between innings, but what you need to know as well is that a lot of work goes in on a morning before a game, and here we have a look with the new coach, Alan Donald, supervising the effort this morning. They actually bowl from both ends, and there we see Plunkett, then Harmison, all of them working under the encouragement of Alan Donald, who's just arrived. There we look at Sidebottom. He tended to be a little bit more successful than most in where he wanted to get it, but I still think there's a bit of work to be done. David Lloyd having a word with his thoughts with Alan Donald, but he has come in, and I still think there's quite a bit of work to be done with this bowling attack here, Michael.
Plenty if that first over from Steve Harmison is anything to go by. I'm not so sure what you know about bowling, Bumble, is going to help him. It clearly didn't help him in that first over.
We weren't talking about him, actually, so there. But, I mean, Alan Donald will be talking exclusively. We know Alan Donald. Relax. Rhythm. Relax. Confidence. There's a tension. You mentioned it. The tense. I'm not telling you what we're talking about anyway.
Yeah, we talked a lot about it, about technical aspects of bowling, but of course cricket is so much more than just technical aspects of the game, whether it's batsman or bowler. The most important thing is to get your mind right when you walk out to bowl or bat. And to be relaxed as a bowler or as a batsman is absolutely key. You can see batsmen who look tense at the crease. Transmits itself through their legs and arms and hands and don't quite do what you want to do. And you can see that with Steve Harmison and to Liam Plunkett to a lesser extent. Just very, very tense and nervy.
The other side of that is that Sidebottom is so relaxed. He just runs in and bowls. He's got a good field here. He's got 3 slips and a gully. He's bowling the final over before lunch. He's got catches all around. Just look at these guys here. Just at short mid-wicket. And very narrow, straight mid-on there. Right in Chris Gale's eye line.
Go back, Bumble, to one thing I said, I think, in the last Test match at Headingley. I think it's the greatest lesson for any young cricketer watching Steve Harmison over the last 6 months, 12 months, about just taking your eye off the ball, and about not preparing properly before that Ashes series, and then that first ball at Brisbane is bowled, and it's something that stays with you. You can't get rid of it then, it's in your head. I'm sure that's really where the problems, where that problem comes back to, that first ball at Brisbane, which is in his head every time he goes out to bowl.
Now then, this is a final delivery from Ryan Sidebottom. He's bowled towards his slips. He's looking for the outside edge. This last delivery, I wouldn't be surprised if it's straight, just coming back into the pads. For a batsman who thinks that this is his last delivery, does he need to play at it? Just make him play here.
He was straight, made Gale play. He played it well in the end, just taking one hand off the bat handle. The West Indies have got through to lunch. They've lost the wicket of Ganga. It's been an interesting 3 overs. We've seen everything, really. We've seen wides, we've seen a wicket, we've seen a boundary. Michael Vaughan doing his best to just relax Steve Harmison, and he just needs his confidence boosting. And the more wickets he gets, the more that will happen.
He'll just race and let it go. See with
of day 2. They've lost the captain, Darren Ganger, LBW, to the one straight delivery that Steve Harmison managed to bowl. Chris Gayle is off the mark.
Is nerving yourself up, tensing yourself up. Why not just wander out with the team and go and bowl?
Because, I mean, up until then, let's face it, it had been England's morning.
Absolutely.
They got their 350 plus. They'd gone way past it. That was their target. First thing this morning we heard from sources close to the England camp. So 350 the target, they got way past that. So they'd been very happy with that.
Still England's morning, they've got a wicket as well. So it's been the perfect morning for England regarding results. But I think what we mustn't hide, and we've been at every Test match venue, and we've seen two lads in particular, before a game in nets, after a game sometimes, practice, work hard. And what we mustn't hide is the fact that two of these England bowlers are really struggling. They're not hiding it, they've been fairly honest. In Harmison and Plunkett, before a game they are spraying it all over the place, their actions are all over the place, and it's quite sad to see, because at some stage as a professional sportsman you go through this. We've all been there, and it's now up to them and Alan Donald and the coaching staff to get them back on track. They know it. That over pretty much summed it up. They've got loads of talent, Plunkett and Harmison. They bowl wicket-taking deliveries. But in between at the moment, they honestly don't quite know where it's going, and it's a worry.
Well, let's come back to that Harmison over in a moment. Let's talk about the good things. Ian Bell being very much one of those. Number 6 is very much his position. You know, to get to 97 almost counts as a failure.
Well, you feel sorry for a guy as he's battled hard, and to get to 97, he deserved his 100. It wasn't to be. It was a delivery that, in fairness, would have got most people out. And perhaps he's in such good nick, that's why he gloved it. Most people would have missed it by a distance. But he played well. He does play well. He looks well organised. That's the ball that gets him in the end. And in fairness, there was nothing he could do about that. It just went from nowhere. And that's what England got to remind themselves, get in the right areas.
And that's where West Indies this morning will be kicking themselves, really, because there is still that life in the pitch. It's not a newish ball, wasn't brand new, but there's certainly plenty of hardness in that ball. And yet, you know, Bell was allowed to play reasonably comfortably. At the other end, I guess Harmison was peppered a bit, wasn't he? I mean, they did put it in at Steve Harmison. They made life very uncomfortable for him. But West Indies must be mighty disappointed to have let England get so many.
Yeah, Fidel Edwards bowled well, but again, the fielding let them down. The West Indies side bottom dropped a relatively easy chance at point, and then they scored about 20-30 runs after that, got up to 370, got a bit of impetus going into the bowling. It also left them with that nice little 15-minute session that you always want as a captain, to have two chances with the new ball. So as we say, perfect for England, but West Indies sloppy this morning. They should have really wrapped up the tail quicker than that.
Yeah, well, let's just show you how those wickets went, actually, the final couple of wickets. Then Steve Harmison, who had battled away, been hit on the helmet, tried to get out the way of this one, but just brushed his glove again this time. It's good bowling.
It was aggressive bowling. They gave him a fair old working over, but I thought he did well. He got, I think, a contribution of 18. And well, Monty was smacking that, sorry, Brian Sutherland, whichever was hitting that one out the ground. But it would have missed leg stump, off the pad, on. But they did well, the tail. And that really does upset the camp. When you think you've got to go out there and we're thinking 300, 310 bowling them out, that's what they'd have been thinking in the dressing room this morning. And then you end up 370, and then you lose a wicket. It's probably a pretty quiet dressing room at the moment.
Yeah. All right, well, let's have a look at that over now. Another... How can we put it? Another dodgy over from Steve Harmison. OK, it did pick up the wicket, nearly picked up another one too. But it's, I mean, Nassi have been very understanding of Steve Harmison and his problems. It is disappointing, again, to say the least, to see the ball disappearing down the wrong line so often. Very nice to see that one.
It is, and it's not pleasing when you see a lad go through this, because you know he's working hard. If he's not working hard, you can be critical, but there's his beehive, there's where he's bowled that first delivery. he was also getting quite a bit of abuse, a lot of boos and comments made from the Old Trafford crowd about that over. And when he got the wicket, I noticed Michael Vaughan jump up and make a sort of signal to the crowd as if to say, come on, get behind him. The only person who can do it is Steve, I'm afraid. He's going through, and the problem, there are two of them. Liam Plunkett's going through the same thing. I watch them every morning, and I'm sure they're not kidding themselves. There's something gone horribly wrong. And Alan Donald in the week said that all bowlers go through this. They have times when something isn't clicking, and it obviously isn't. I don't know if Ian ever went through that phase, but when it's with Steve. With Steve, it goes so horribly wrong that it's very visual as well.
Well, there's no hiding place once you're out there in the middle, and that's why I go back to that point at the start. Why would you want to go out for 5 minutes when you're going to come out as a team and run up and bowl? And if you don't get the first one right, suddenly the seeds of doubt are sowed again. I'd like to see him relax a bit more, and I thought they looked very tense. That wicket hopefully will have relaxed him. He'll go back in the dressing room. Alan Donald's got 40 minutes now just to get into his ear, shut him down. But it is a problem. And England are going to have to address this problem at some stage.
And the other point is not to expect, as it were, too much from Alan Donald, who's only just arrived in the post. You've got to give him time to work whatever magic he can.
You see, again, what I'd say, and I sort of advocated this in the week, is that he bowled in that last spell at Headingley. He bowled well. And I'd like to have seen him try and play in the MCC game against the West Indies. Not to just bowl, he played in a one-day game and bowled a few overs, I guess 10. I'd like to have seen him actually carry on bowling. He needs to carry on bowling, so he's probably bowled once in the week. So I'd like to. Steve Harmison seems to be a rhythm bowler, and in between games, I'd like him in particular and Plunkett to bowl a lot more.
All right. Well, thanks for those thoughts. Let's leave it there for now. Coming up after the break, we've got the next in our series, Moments in Time.
A very important knock and a very good knock. I think Mike Selby was the bowler that was bowling so well for England in that innings. He got rid of the early batsmen. Alvin Kalicharan, early batting order gone. And Greenwich had to stay there. It was very important that he stayed there and we could build an innings around it.
You knew sometimes when it's your day. Some shots you play, you know it's your day. And from the way the ball was leaving the bat, I felt unstoppable. And as a batsman, I'm certain everyone gets in that zone.
I remember turning round and thought, if you don't give that out, you need your ice testing, Cyril, because that's out. And I turned round and I just give it out and I didn't know what to do.
In that innings, I have to admit, I played a couple of shots early on off the back foot, which I timed nicely, and the strength of my game is timing a cricket ball. And it was always for me, if I timed one early on, especially if it went back past the bowler, then I thought, as long as I'm not silly, I'll make runs.
Now, things to look forward to. First of all, tomorrow, Cricket AM will be on the screens at 9 o'clock in the morning on Sky Sports 1. Guests Owen Shah, Glamorgan's Michael Powell and Rugby's Mike Catt. And on Sunday, we've got Cricket Riders on TV back in. Second week of that for the summer. Paul Allott in the chair again, so that's 9:30 on Sky Sports 1. Quick reminder then of what's happening here at Old Trafford. We've had one session on the second day of the third Empire Test match. England enjoying themselves going to 370. West Indies not so much, losing a wicket in that short session before lunch. They're 17 for 1, still trailing by 353. So plenty of work still to be done there. All right, time now for Moments in Time, where we go back and we pick out the best bits of previous contests between England and the West Indies here at Old Trafford.
It was honours even going into the third test between England and the West Indies in 1976. After 2 draws, a strong touring side with Richards, Greenwich, Lloyd and Holding were ready to be let off the leash.
We had lost to Australia 75-76 in Australia, then we beat India in the West Indies early 76, and then we came to England, and I think that was just about the launching pad of that great West Indies team that continued through into the 80s.
England took 4 early wickets. But Gordon Greenwich mastered the England attack, getting 134 of the West Indies' first innings 211.
a very important knock and a very good knock. I think Mike Selby was the bowler that was bowling so well for England in that innings. He got rid of the early batsmen. Alvin Khalid-Sharan, early batting order gone. And Greenwich had to stay there. It was very important that he stayed there and we could build an innings around him.
4 runs, the 4 runs that Gordon Greenwich needed to complete quite a brilliant 100.
England's reply never got out of first gear, lasting a paltry 32.5 overs, 71 all out. Holding ending with figures of 5 for 17.
I think I was perhaps as fast as I could be, but I wouldn't say I really finished the article at that stage. I was just 22 years old. I don't think the pitch was all that great, but you know, 5 for 17, I'll live with that any day.
The West Indies were in no mood to let their strong position slip, powering to 411. Gordon Greenwich in supreme form, making his 2nd century of the match, only the 3rd of his career.
That is a century in each innings for Gordon Greenwich. 134 in the first innings, 101 in the second innings of this match.
Needing a massive 552, again England capitulated. All out for 126. The masterful West Indies touring side of 1984 wiped England aside in all 5 tests. But when it came to the Texaco Trophy one-day series, things were a little closer. Old Trafford was the venue for Game 1, and the tourists found themselves in trouble early on.
That wasn't a bad wicket at all, you know. Everyone was saying, oh, it was slow and it was topping a bit, but on the best of wickets, you could muck things up sometimes.
Despite the regular fall of wickets, Viv Richards was in the form of his life and made batting look easy.
You knew sometimes when it's your day. Some shots you play, you know it's your day. And from the way the ball was leaving the bat, I felt unstoppable. And as a batsman, I'm certain everyone gets in that zone.
Blasting past his 100, it was clear Viv wasn't finished there. Firing his way to a then world record 189 not out off 170 balls.
People said, why didn't you score 200? I said, to be honest, there's too many things you were worrying about. The selfish thoughts never really creep in. It was maybe what was best for the team and how well Vivian Richards could fit into doing that.
From 102 for 7, Richards guided the West Indies to 272. Helped by some clever batting from number 11, Michael Holding.
We didn't need to bowl. I think they were fully beaten then. Only one guy, I think, came and gave some resistance whilst batting that time would have been Alan Lamb. And Alan have always been a heavy scorer against the West Indies, attacking player, and he played very well, but the rest around him just crumbled.
England collapsed to 168 all out. But the Old Trafford crowd had been treated to one of the greatest batting performances of all time. A glorious few days of sunshine at Old Trafford greeted England and the West Indies in 1995. But it was all too much for umpire Dickie Bird, who stopped play for 20 minutes as sunlight reflected off a glass roof into the batsman's eyes. After the slight delay, England responded well, bowling the visitors out for 216. Dominic Cork and Angus Fraser, the pick of the bowlers. In reply, good knocks from Mike Atherton and Graham Thorpe set England on their way. And a controversial 50 from Cork helped England to 437.
One of the particular balls I'd stayed very deep in my crease, hit the ball through mid-off, didn't realise anything had happened. Myself and Mike Watkinson were batting at the time. We ran 4 runs. The ball had got to the boundary and Bishop had just knocked it back. And I remember looking at the stumps at the end that I'd hit the ball from, and I thought, well, the bail's hanging off here, what's happened? And I thought Junior Murray had just knocked the bail off. Then I heard somebody appeal, I think it was Richie Richardson at mid-off, or mid-on appealed, and Dickie Bird said not out. So I just got the bail, put it back on, carried on. And it wasn't until I think it was about 20 minutes before lunch this had happened, and I remember looking at the screens and thinking, I've just got away with something there.
And when luck's on your side, anything can happen. the West Indies made their way to 159 for 3 at stops on day 3. And the crowd were barely in their seats the next day when Cork came on to bowl.
The first 3 balls were absolute rubbish. You know, I was that pumped up. I think I was pumped up too much. And then I just thought, come on, you know, don't let it take you away here. Don't let, you know, the atmosphere and the situation go back to what you do well is trying to hit the right lines and lengths. I remember hitting the ball just outside off stump. Just a normal ball that Richie Richardson tried to leave. It hit the inside of his bat, hit his pads, went onto the stumps. The most luckiest wicket you could ever, you know, want for, but at that time we were just happy. Richie Richardson, that's one gone. And Junior Murray came out, so I thought, right, come on, you've got a chance here. Early on, he goes across his stumps, really full, you've got a chance of LBW. And I got the ball right in the right area, just about off stump, just reversing back into about middle. Junior Murray went across his stumps, tried to hit it through the leg side. Turned round to Cyril Mitchley, the South African umpire. My normal appeal where I'm trying to scream like, you know, a big girl. I've got my hands up in the air, I'm splayed everywhere, and Cyril gives it out. You know, Junior Murray's giving it this one with his bat, I've hit it. 2 and 2. I just thought, right, that's a great start for us. Never thinking the next ball's a hat-trick ball. Didn't even enter my head. Then I heard the crowd. The crowd seemed to come from nowhere, you know. I remember getting to my back of my mark and I thought, you might never ever get a chance of this ever again in your career at Test level. And exactly what I wanted, it happened.
Another big shout, and he's got him! It's a Test match hat-trick. Hooper's gone first ball. Dominic Cork's arrived on the Test match scene in no uncertain terms.
Carl Hooper went across his stumps. I remember turning round and thought, if you don't give that out, you need your ice testing, Cyril, because that's out. And I turned round and he just give it out, and I didn't know what to do.
Cork's hat-trick put England well on top. Only Brian Lara's 145 saved the West Indies from an innings defeat. In reply, England reached a required 94 to win by the end of the day. Old Trafford 2000 would be a special moment for 2 England heroes. Mike Atherton and Alex Stewart were both playing their 100th Test match for England.
When you think back as a schoolboy, sort of your dream is to make your Test debut. Then when you make your Test debut, it's all how many times can you play? If someone offered me 100 Test matches on that day when I made my Test debut in Jamaica, I first of all said, you're mad. But would have bitten their hand off. So to achieve it, yes, it was a special moment. Lancashire did a very special presentation to Michael and myself, as did the ECB. But once all the handshakes and the pats on the back, etc., had been done, it was then, well, let's concentrate on the cricket. That's what you're there for.
The West Indies' first innings was short-lived. Ramnaresh Sarwan top scoring with 36. The West Indies all out for 157. But Courtney Walsh soon had England on the back foot, taking the first 3 wickets for 19 runs.
Like anything, I always try to just play my way. Now, you've got to make sure that you play according to the wicket. I always try to dominate from the moment I took guard to when I faced my first ball. So I tried to make sure that I stayed very positive, very upbeat. There was Marcus Trescothick at the other end, who was making his Test debut. So at the same time you concentrate on the cricket ball in your own innings, you are also just trying to help the debutant through what is a tricky period. You generally know quite early on in your innings that your foot movement, your trigger movement, your head position, etc. If they're all in order, then you'll find that your bat comes through straight and therefore you're making good contact with the ball. In that innings, I have to admit, I played a couple of shots early on off the back foot, which I timed nicely, and the strength of my game was timing the cricket ball. And it was always for me, if I timed one early on, especially if it went back past the bowler, then I thought, as long as I'm not silly, I'll make runs.
Stewart moved into the 90s towards the end of play on day 2. A packed Old Trafford willing him over the line.
When you get into the 90s, whatever people say, those nervous 90s are definitely there. And then when you get to 99, well, you've got to make sure you get the 3 figures. But no, I didn't have a conscious effort of trying to get that 100 that night. It was very much, again, try and play each ball on its merit, and if it goes your way, then fantastic.
Is this Alex Stewart's best Test innings? He celebrates his century with a century.
I always celebrated hundreds well, but the fact, yes, it was a 100th Test match. The Old Trafford crowd were fantastic. They clapped, they applauded, they stood up. It seemed to go on forever. And I have to admit, after about 30 seconds, there was more and more noise. And I'm looking around thinking, has a streaker come on? Has someone run on the field or whatever? But it was the Old Trafford crowd showing their appreciation for 100. But the fact that it was a Test 100 on the 100th Test match.
Despite Stewart's efforts, some inclement weather and 100 from Brian Lara meant the match ended in a draw. But the Test will be remembered for other reasons.
Well, between us here in the studio, we span most of the years covered by those highlights from England against the West Indies here at Old Trafford. Now, we saw a lot of West Indies batsmen making runs. Gordon Greenidge in the 70s there, playing an outstanding couple of hundreds here. At the time, Ian, you were saying, what about the bowlers? What about the bowlers? Because you have a certain perspective, don't you? If you're a bowler, you probably remember Greenidge, Haynes, Richards and the rest of them smacking runs. If you're a batsman, you remember the 4 fast bowlers making life very, very tough.
Yeah, I think we should have seen a bit more of the... I mean, go back to that Test match when Brian Close and John Edridge here fended off Holding and Roberts. It was some of the most formidable and painful quick bowling. Just watching it was painful because you could feel the blows going in. And I remember Brian Close coming back after that Test match. We played at Edgbaston, and Steve Rouse, who was a medium quick, county bowler, hit him with a ball that popped a bit at Edgbaston. It was just black down one side from the bruises and the blows, and he buckled under it. Where normally he wouldn't have even flinched.
Because Brian, of course, is your captain at Somerset when you first started playing first-class cricket. One of the toughest that's ever played the game.
Well, I don't think I've ever saw him go down, but that was the nearest he ever got to going down. I saw him take some blows, but I have to say that when he batted out here, I remember some guy running onto the pitch with the biggest bat you've ever seen. It was about 4 foot wide and about 10 foot high, and Closey said that's perhaps my only chance was to stand with that in between him. And it was amazing bowling and on a pitch to help them.
I'm going to say there are countless stories about Brian Close on and off the field over quite a long career, including stood at short leg, taking any number of blows straight on the forehead and just shouting, catch it, waiting for the rebound, waiting for someone else to catch the rebound. He seemed to feel no pain until, of course, you get to that situation where you've got the West Indies paceman knocking it into his ribs on a regular basis here.
Yeah, that as I say, it was quite scary stuff. I mean, Michael Holding bowled quick, but everyone forgets that there was other guys called Garner, Croft. Colin Croft sat down there, was as mean as they came when he bowled. And he once, Clive Lloyd and I said, when we were in the Caribbean, captains, and I said to Clive, I said, it'd be quite nice if the boys had a drink, because it's been a tough tour. And we'd had the problems with, of course, there was Ken Barrington's death, and we had all the problems with Robin Jackman arriving to the team, etc., etc. That's quite nice to have a drink. And Colin Croft turned around to Clive Lloyd and said, Captain, he said, I can't sit down and have a drink with the guys I'm trying to kill.
We'll make the point now that Colin, as you say, Colin is down the corridor doing radio work, and he's one of the nicest men you could meet. Now he's not got the cricket ball in his hand. He's one of the nicest men you could possibly meet. I mean, it was a formidable attack. We've got, of course, Michael Holding is with us throughout the seasons, talking a great game, of course, on commentary, but he played a magnificent game too. He made it look ever so easy, even with that hair.
Well, you didn't get called whispering death for no reason, because when you're at the non-striker's end, you kept on looking back. You always hear bowlers come pounding in. You never heard Mike. He seemed to just come across the surface.
Glide in, really.
And no helmets. Some of the tail-enders having to face those 4. We've seen
right,
here
in the
today.
70s, of course, because the start of those pictures, basically the 70s, no helmets, because it's the late 70s. World Series started in, 78? That's where the motorcycle helmets first came in. And you saw that, of course, in Australia, with the likes of Dennis Amos pioneering it. This great big motorcycle helmet against the same people, Roberts, Holding, Garner, you name them. Wayne Daniel. There's a whole list of West Indies fast bowlers, which actually brings us back to that conversation I had with Michael Atherton and Mikey this morning, where they were talking about Fiedel Edwards and the pace. Michael Atherton said, well, you can't have 4 Fiedel Edwards. Well, the point is, yes, you can. If you've got Holding, Roberts, Garner, Marshall, Daniel, Croft, all sorts of other people. You can have as many as you like. So 4 on one side,
Yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic era. I mean, I was brought up on that era watching those cricketers, watching you lot play against them, and it's unusual because generally in sport things progress and get better with the golf and how far they hit it or whatever. That attack and that side really hasn't been better. Probably the Australians recently, that would be a good matchup. But for me, I think that era of cricket was absolutely enthralling. The pace it was played at. And on both sides, like it was said there, Alan Lamb had had a good record against the West Indies. He played against them well. There was some exhilarating cricket.
I think in that series, when you saw Mike Hendrick, who was batting there, I think it was in that series where he actually said to the umpire, can you move the sight screen? He said, which way do you want it, Hendo? He said, between me and that bowler. So, I mean, it was an amazing time. They were such an athletic side as well. I mean, Viv Richards and Michael Home must cringe when they see some of the fielding and some of the stuff that goes on here at the moment with this current West Indian side. But those guys were, in my opinion, the best side that I certainly ever played against, and that's including some great Australian sides, and the best side that I've ever seen, and that includes, of course, Australia, all conquering Australia.
And technically very good with the bat. I mean, Gordon Greenidge, we highlight Viv a lot, obviously, because he's arguably the greatest ever, but I used to go, my brother played a little bit for Hampshire, and I used to go and watch him and watch Gordon at the other end. Gordon was playing, and just technically fantastic, because he'd been brought up playing county cricket in England with Desmond Haynes, and had everything. I mean, Gordon Greenidge was one of the greatest batsmen of. If he wanted to be his day, you know, I just thought at times your attack or any attack just was not getting him out. If he wanted it that day, and I just technically brilliant. The shot he used to play off his hip, that little pull shot, and had a little bit of a arrogance about him as well. You know, a bit of a strut.
Confidence too. Yeah.
Well, when you were bowling and you were a fielding side, and when he started limping, you knew you were in trouble with Gordon.
Yeah.
But I mean, but you forget there was probably the best opening partnership of Test cricket for a long, long time. But the other guy at the other end wasn't bad, Des Haynes. So you had Haynes and Greenidge. Then we forget about Kallicharran, another terrific player. You had Larry Gomes, who used to bolster it, Richie Richardson in the later days. I mean, they had a lot of very, very good players. Lawrence Rowe, some great players.
Going on an era or two, or half an era or so, when you were playing against West Indies, of course, things started to change a bit. There were still big, tall, fast bowlers, maybe not 4 at a time. We still had Ambrose and Walsh to contend with. How are the fingers, by the way?
Yeah, they've been Ambrosed and Walshed a few times, yeah. I think the difference, and that's why I bring up technique, is that in my era, with certain players, not all of them, obviously you've had your Laras or whatever, in my era, if you had Dominic Cork at Lord's swinging it, or Andrew Caddick, or here, reverse swinging, that hat-trick came from reverse swing, and you could see all the West Indies batsmen getting their head across to offside and getting out LBW. I always felt as captain, if there was any sideways movement, then in my era of cricket, you could get through the West Indies batting lineup, and the likes of Cork, Caddick, Gough had good records against them. And like I say, the hat-trick that we just saw there was down to reverse swing. And also we had players that also enjoy playing against the West Indies.
Well, Alex Stewart
in that 100. On his favourite ground, which he loved batting here, it was similar to the Oval, he had pace and bounce. You always felt Alec would do well. I remember sitting in the West Indies once, and I wasn't playing. Atherton had left me out again, and I was sat there, and I was 12th man, and Walsh, Ambrose, and a couple of others, the faster men, were sat there chatting, and they were picking their World 11 at that time. It would have been about late 90s, and they had Stewart in, and they had Alex Stewart as in their World 11 of batsmen. They really rated, and he played with a bit of a Caribbean way as well, Alec. He picked his bat up and, you know, he hooked and pulled and he cut.
He played those cross-bat shots.
He played fast bowling well, yeah.
Well, there's a great comparison between him and Alan Lamb. Very, very similar players. Used to look to go back a long way to them. Strong cutting, pulling, and also then when they pitched it up, very good at going back down the ground. And they were very similar. If you look at the 2 and stars, I noticed to you then we watched Alex Stewart how much movement he made back. Very similar to Lammy.
Yeah, of course, his highlight in a way, not just the Old Trafford 100 here, but the double hundreds, or the twin hundreds rather, to be more precise, in Barbados.
And both received incredible receptions from the crowd. Here, as he said, the game stopped for a while because they appreciated a man getting 100 on his 100th game. And in Barbados, we all know what Barbados is like. Not only the locals, but the amount of Brits that go across and celebrate that Test match. And to get 200s in the game, all right, I don't think we went on to win the game, but Alec played quite beautifully. Certain pitches, that's my point, certain pitches, like Barbados, the Oval, Old Trafford, Stewart was just phenomenal.
I can think of a few Barbados pitches we played on in the mid-80s that he'd done very well to get 50, let alone 100. I promise you. I mean, I'm not just being in my generation, in my time about this, because there were some pitches there which, with Holding, with that same list again, that were really, really lively. They were true. They're even enough, but really lively. And that you often see that you use the sort of the top end of the bat. The shoulder of the bat used to be a productive source of runs. You just had to get it over slip. It was an extraordinary series.
The argument, I guess, is that was a unique West Indies lineup, really. Since then, there has been a let up when Ambrose and Walsh came off, or when Collymore or Fidel Edwards comes off here. There is a let up. There's always freebies to hit. So that lineup was unique. There was never a let up really. Bit of Viv. I bet you all dipped your boots against Viv, or did you try and keep him on?
Tried to. Got out. Well, I was going to say, you nick your behind off Viv. And oh, what have I done that for? You get a hard fought 50 out to Richards. You get back in the dressing room and you think, no, it's not worth it. Right. Thanks for those thoughts. Thanks for those memories. We'll try and sort of apply the bandages on our mental scars before we go. But we've got some cricket coming up as we get closer now to the start of the afternoon session here at Old Trafford on day 2.